Hello, everybody, and welcome into this Friday's live broadcast. It is the 28th of July, 2023. We're almost through July. Oh, thank goodness. It has been, every day has been no less than 110 degrees this month here in Phoenix. It's weird that I'm looking forward to August. Usually August is worse. It's been tough, but we'll get through it together. Today, I have a mini PC review, one that I've been very much looking forward to. It's the MinisForum, the HN2673. The unit they sent has 16 gigs of RAM and 512 storage, which seems to be pretty much standard on most mini PCs these days. It's fully upgradable, but this unit has a discrete graphics card, and that is something new. Talked about the add-in graphics cards on laptops and on some mini PCs that have what's called an MXM slot. And the MXM slot is a micro PCI Express, get what the last M stands for, but it's for essentially adding a graphics card. Sometimes you can even upgrade the graphics card, kind of depends on the system. This has an Intel-based graphics card, but not the one on the CPU. No. And while this may not be a leader in frames per second on gaming, it's absolutely something worth considering depending on the kind of gaming that you do. You could save quite a bit of money. So we're going to look into that today. You'll see the box is still shrink wrapped. I've not opened this. In fact, I only just received it in the mail Wednesday. So I've had it 2 days, and I'm looking forward, very much looking forward to seeing if it lives up to the hype, because all of the specs sound very, very promising, including its ability to upgrade with two 2.5-inch drive slots inside of it, I'm told. So we're going to verify that today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It is, as I mentioned, it's Friday. We've made it to the end of another week. And let me shout out a thank you to those of you who have contributed to the broadcast. And let's see, I'm getting an error that YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. How does the stream? Oh, I see now. Oh yes, we are having some difficulties with the quality of our live stream today for some reason. So maybe that will settle in. It's very unusual. You know, it's interesting that kilobits per second are actually quite high. I don't recall setting it that high. So we'll see if it settles down. I want to say thank you to those who have contributed during today's broadcast. And that includes, prior to the stream starting, I had a $50 Zelle contribution from Frankie B. Thank you to Frankie B for all of your support these last few weeks. Also to Sarge Tech, who sent, what did Sarge Tech send? I'm going to double check it so I don't get it wrong. An Amazon gift card for $10. So thank you for all of your support this month, Sarge Tech, as well, and months prior. And in the live chat, there are some super chat contributions that have occurred. I'll give those a shout out. Thank you to our good friend Buster, also known as Peter Laycock, joining us from Bonnie, Scotland. Peter contributes £10. He says, good evening, Carey and Marlena and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 63 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 17 degrees Celsius. Oh, it sounds lovely. Alan Lindas contributes $7.77 and says, I will supply my contribution anyway. So in other words, not a late fee. Paul O'Brien with €2 says, wow, I just joined the chat. Here's my late fee. Speaking of which, thank you guys so much for continuing to support the channel. And yes, we are having some bizarre connection issues. Oh, it's gone green. Everything should be good now. Whatever that was, it seems to have moved past it. So before I get into opening and unboxing this, I want to make sure the stream is settled in. Now, I have been recording the streams locally just in case. So if anything should happen during today's stream that should interrupt it or severely cause a disruption, then what I can do is go back to the live, the recording, which is not going to have any problems. and then I can replace this live stream with the recording. It takes about 12 to 20 hours after the stream is over for that to be processed, uploaded, and then YouTube process. I have to process it, I have to upload it, YouTube has to process it. So it's about 12 to 20 hours afterwards. And you'll know if that happens because the video will move away from the live section to the regular video section, and there will not be a live chat playback. I will lose that. So hopefully we've moved past whatever the problems are and everything will be fine. But I do run that as a backup now. I freed up a lot of drive space, so we should be good for a number of shows before I run out of drive space again. Bob R contributes $10.02. He says, I'm just adding my 2 cents, and then $10 for the community. Thank you, Bob. Bob joining us from Michigan. I see Marlena DG is joining us in the chat room. And from the other side of this wall. Douglas Purcell says, hit the thumbs up button as you come in. Well, that's kind if you do that. I certainly appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything. It takes very little effort, and it's a nice way to show support for the channel. All right, everything looks like whatever we were having problems with seems to have gone away. Let's hope it stays gone away. Let me thank the folks again at MinisForum for continuing to include us on their review list of people they send units out to. We have another unit from MinisForum that they have asked me not to do anything with until after the first week of August. It's a little maddening to have something and I want to show it to you, but you cannot buy it and they're not ready for me to show it to you yet. However, to distract me and get my mind away from that, they sent me this. So this should be ready to rock and roll. I think they offer a bare bones of this. In fact, you know what? Let's take a look at MinisForum's website. I do not see this unit available anywhere else but at MinisForum, as far as I can tell. You have to order it from them if you want it. I don't see it available at Amazon or other retailers. Whether or not that changes in the future, and it has to do with how new it is, I don't know. But I've got a link in the video notes, in the video description below this video, that's going to take you to this website right here, which I am going to share with you as soon as I find the right button to press. There it is. All right, the MinisForum HN2673. $649 is about $200 less than I thought this was going to cost. 16, and with this, it's 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gig storage. Obviously, if you want to go 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage, you can pay an extra $60 there. Or you can go 64 gigs of RAM, just max the RAM out with 1 terabyte of storage, or just $1 under $800. There is no bare bones version of this available, unfortunately, but it's $649. I mean, come on. What are you getting for $649? Well, let's talk about it. The HN2673, the Core i7-12650H processor. That's Intel 7 nanometer process. It has Windows 11 Pro already installed for you. It's got 4 air vents. It's got the Intel Arc A730M discrete graphics card added, so you're not using graphics on the CPU. The CPU itself has 6 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores and can reach a frequency of up to 4.7 gigahertz in speed. And of course, Intel's Thread Director is what associates and aligns your data being processed to the proper core so that you're not wasting a performance core on a very low resource intensive process. And the Thread Director just handles all that automatically. It's nothing for you to do anything with. It's just back there doing its thing. And it's a very difficult thing to measure performance on, because what it's going to do is, based on how you're using your computer, it automatically optimizes the tasks that you are running uniquely, that is you, with the best and most efficient route through the CPU to get that task done quickly, efficiently, and without you having to make any decisions. In other words, you're not assigning cores to tasks. It's doing this for you automatically. It's an incredible technology, and it takes it another step when we talk about measuring performance. We talk about cache, we talk about PCIe lanes, we talk about cores. but the thread director that identifies which tasks go to which cores is also a significant performance booster, which is very difficult to measure with synthetic benchmarks. DDR4 is the RAM, not DDR5. This is not a 13th gen. The PCIe is Gen 4. And will they say it's up to 2 terabytes? That's old and outdated. This limit doesn't, I can confidently say without testing it, there is no 2 terabyte limit. The 2.5 inch, as I mentioned, they have 2 slots for adding 2.5 inch SATA based solid state or mechanical drives. And of course, the memory is dual channel. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get to 64 gigs. The only way you can get to 64 gigs is by buying the single largest memory module in this form factor twice. And the biggest memory module you can buy as of July 28th, 2023 on DDR4 is 32 gigs. So if the biggest you can buy is 32 gigs and you have 2 slots, it's not hard to do the math to know you cannot exceed 64 gigs of RAM unless you add more slots or you somehow find a way to add density to the RAM modules. A little more about the CPU here. We've already talked about the single core performance versus the previous gen, multi-core performance versus previous gen. I've mentioned before, when comparing similar processors, one generation to the other, it's about an average of 10% difference. And if you take the average of 8% and 13%, it's going to get you right around, 10%. This is all about the Intel Arc A730M, built on the Xe-HPG microarchitecture. It supports ray tracing. I like how this says XMX. I think it's MXM. I think somebody's dyslexic. AI hardware accelerator. I don't know. Maybe that's something different. Are you telling me the XMX is on the MXM processor? I think, or the connector, I think that's supposed to be MXM. AI hardware acceleration technology and the advanced Xe media engine providing support for gaming and creative work. Yeah, that means video editing, photo editing, creative work. They've got a couple of 3D Mark results for Time Spy and Firestrike, which you've seen me run here in the past. Let's see, compared to software programming, Intel Arc graphics can encode 4.4 times faster, 50% more efficient than H.264. All right. XESS super sampling using, well, we're back to XMX again, so maybe that's not a typo. XMX AI hardware acceleration technology, AI enhanced output can increase resolution while maintaining high quality output so everyone can enjoy a powerful gaming experience. Looks like 77 frames per second in Hades, and with XESS on, 112 frames per second in the same game. Why there's only one game and it's one I've never heard of, I don't know. DaVinci Resolve Studio export time comparison. The Intel Core CPU with integrated graphics versus the Intel Arc Max A730 GPU is 1.88 times faster using the Intel Arc. Interesting. The cooling system, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 fans across the back here. Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably going to stay nice and breezy. Fully hollowed out design with unobstructed airflow. Down pressure heatsink, small and quiet. So that's clearly, I definitely think who's ever doing their web design should be checked for dyslexia. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I'm sincere. I think there's a serious undiagnosed medical issue that should be treated here. Small and quiet, that the E at the end needs to go before the T. Efficient and quiet performance release, 45 watt CPU, 95 watt GPU, a max 34 dB noise decibel level. The chassis can be set horizontally or vertically. Obviously, we want to keep it vertical because I think it looks way better. And here's an exploded design of the internal components, kind of vaguely without detail here. We've got the solid state drive connectors or SATA SSD or SATA hard. Let's just say SATA connectors, because whether or not it's solid state or mechanical is up to you. And our RAM, solid state drive, our M.2, It supports 4 monitors at 4K at the same time. And it does that using 2 USB-C ports and 2 HDMI ports. So you would use a USB-C to an HDMI adapter, a cable that you can buy places like Amazon sell. So yeah, 4K at 60 across all 4 video outputs. Look at all the plugs. We've got a 2.5 gig Ethernet. There's our USB Type-C that supports DisplayPort and data, followed by our HDMI, and then duplicated again here with 2 USB 3.2 Type-A's, 2 USB 2.0 Type-A's, and a 19-volt input barrel jack connector for power. Up here at the very top, we've got a recessed button that's for clearing the CMOS. We've got a single 3.2 Type-A connector. We've got a headphone jack and a microphone jack that are separated out. We've got a 3.2 Type-C data jack that will not support video output. And then, of course, our power button is at the very bottom. And you can see it's such a brand new product, there are no reviews on it yet. Okay, so this is what we know to expect. Is it made in China? Everything's made in China. You want to know how you can tell if it's made in China? Look at the price. If this was made in Europe or the United States, that would easily be $1,200. So if you want to pay more for exactly the same thing, I just don't think it's going to be very easy for you to maintain your business if that's the business you go in. Consumers are very much driven by price. And if you can get your skilled labor in another country where the factories already exist, because that's what they do there in mass, you can save a lot of money in production cost and offer your customers a much cheaper alternative. And that's unfortunate, or fortunately the way of the world economy, and such has been the case, well, pretty much since the formation of the United States, as far as I know. The things we've done to make labor cheaper have always been undesirable, on the sense that people will feel that it's exploiting a group of people that are willing to work for less and often work harder. And other people feel like it's a blessing because it enables us to have a more fulfilled, enriched life with luxury items that we otherwise could not afford. So, yeah, whether or not something is made in China doesn't hold the negative view it did, say, in the 1970s, maybe even the 1980s. Apple products are almost all unanimously, what's the word I want? Across the board, made in China. And a lot of things that we use in everyday life, from silverware, plates, the cars we drive have parts that are sourced from China. So yeah, I don't think there's any secret. I don't think anybody's hiding it. In fact, these companies are very, very, very proudly making their manufacturing products in China. Stand behind it with a great warranty and excellent customer support, while saving you a ton of money. All right, so with the economics politics behind us, let's see, let me go back over to my chat room and see what I've been missing. Oystein joins us. Hello, Oystein. Welcome in, my friend. And there's Sarge Tech and Douglas Burchell. Mark Gaines joins us from Northern Ireland. Doman 2000 says hello. Patrick Ursaw saying hello. Samuel Kowalski says hello. Frank Jimmy, George Ferrugia, Chris Johnson, our good friend Peter Laycock, all jumping in the chat saying hello. Nick Poverman, Thomas Backenstow, Essential Working Too Hard, James Hook, Sherry McFarland. Welcome in, my friends. Good to see everybody again. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do this unboxing. Are you gonna grab a camera and do the close-up work for the unboxing? Yeah. Such sacrifice. So the things you do for this channel, I do for you. Just completely unappreciated.
Things I do for you. Not paid enough for that.
Nobody is. Welcome to the club. Take a number. That's why it's going to outsource to China.
Okay.
That battery fully charged? Is the light still on that camera?
Yes, it is.
Wow, so it's still
I can leave
charging.
it plugged in.
It's up to you. All right, you're going to bring that over here?
Ready?
Yeah,
Oh, wait,
come on.
it's not ready. Okay.
At some point, I expect us, hopefully, to be interrupted by a doorbell. I'm expecting the
Yes,
new
I know.
camera to arrive today. But
I'm-
Amazon just says
I am-
before 10 p.m.,
That's
which
why I
is,
was sitting out there
vague.
waiting for it.
and it requires a signature. So
I know.
so we have to be here for it.
I know.
I was hoping I'd have it in place in time for today's video, but
Yeah.
it looks like members only Mondays are going to be able to be the first to see it.
Okay.
Okay, I need a knife. So this is all live, unscripted, and unrehearsed. And as you can see, this package has shrink wrap. There is no, as I mentioned, there's no script. So I never quite know how things are going to go, but usually it's pretty rare that we ever have a dead on arrival product or something is damaged in shipping. It can happen, but it's very, very rare. Some people have a concern about that. And I can tell you it's possible, but unlikely. You can see we have a little bit of wrinkling here on the box from the shipping, but this did come to us all the way from, I think, Hong Kong. So it's quite a distance from Hong Kong to Phoenix. And when you receive it, you unbox it, it's going to be packaged like this. I'll reach in here and just pull this out. I see 4 fans,
Oh.
like the bottom, front, the top. Ooh, it's got a little weight to it. It must weigh about 4 or 5 pounds. And underneath here, you put the camera down in there, we've got our power brick, a big one at that. This is a 19-volt power brick. Always take this protective plastic off. It keeps the unit from getting scratched in shipping, but when you start using the unit, it can cause it to run hotter than it should be running, which is not good. If you want to have a premature failure, wrap something around this while it's on to keep the air from cooling it, and you'll have this fail sooner than later. So take that plastic off. It's just there to protect it in shipping. I really like that they're using a full-size PC power cable because those are fairly ubiquitous, fairly common. We've got an HDMI cable. We've got our power cable. We have our base. All your base belong to us. And we have slot covers for something I don't know what yet. Maybe something inside. So what I'm going to do, I'll put those back in there, put that back down in there, and we'll throw all that back in there. We'll get this out of the way so you can have some space to work. Oh, got some screws, which I think are needed for the base, and I think we should put the base on it. Yeah, you agreeing?
Mm-hmm. I do. Pretty neat.
So we have more plastic. If you leave this on, it's going to make it very slippery on your desk or surface. You need to remove it. It's got a little bit of friction. So when you place it on the desk, it won't easily slide around. Something like this on the bottom of a mouse is good because it helps it slide, but you wouldn't want that on a stand. Okay, that over there.
Is that the satisfaction of the peel?
The peel. And I got to put on my glasses so I can see. Let's see. I've learned the hard way. This only goes on one way. Oh, there's little nubs. You see that? See those little nubs? They push down. That's for. Oh, just seats right down over those. Oh, I guess it just helps guide you to. All right, I'm going to open this bag of screws here, which I'm assuming. Why do we have 6 of them? We only need 4. They've given us 6. I'm always confused if I get more screws than I need, because I don't know if I'm missing something or if they're just there as spares. Accustomed to not having spares. I'll get that one started. I'll get this one started. Don't tighten them down yet till we get them all started. That one started. And for some reason, 2 of these, oh no, they all have some Loctite on them. It's just unhappy. Screw thread. Very strange. Now with them all started, I can go ahead and tighten them down. Do not over tighten these. You just want to snug them down to keep the foot from sliding off. Phillips number 2 is going to be your best bet for these types of screws. And I'll put these other screws over here. Don't let me forget them. Now, as to the unit itself, how it opens. Was there no documentation in this? I don't think there was. Now that I'm thinking about it. You know, I'm starting to wonder if maybe to open this up, we have to take the base off of it. I'm wondering if that's what those little push down dealies are, or detents for the side panels. Maybe that's just something we pop out, because I don't. No. I want to open it up real quick. I want to see the inside of it. But I should be able to simply loosen these screws. I shouldn't have to take them all the way out. And then slide the foot forward. See, I'm thinking, oh, there are screws. Okay. Okay, so on this side, oh, you know what? I take all the screws out. Because I want to see what they're hiding. So then I guess you'd push this detent down. Screws on the other side? No? Do I lift up on it? Yeah, lift up on it. There it is. There are a lot of fans. I told you I had a lot of fans. You didn't believe me. See some kind of a heat sink here. See an antenna wire there. We'll come over to the other side, and I guess you lift it up. I'm not quite sure what these detents are for. Puzzling. They don't seem to be attached to anything. This up and pull it away. Don't pry it away like I did. Here's the inside.
Do as I say, not as I do.
So look, we've got our 2.5-inch SATA connector right here, and we've got another one. That's unusual to see 2 of them. And you see these little hooks? Those are designed so that you, instead of placing screws into the sides of your 2.5-inch drive, you're going to slide your 2.5-inch drive in over these hooks, and then this middle bar is going to hold it down in place. It looks like there's additional screws here if you wanted to go at it that way, but I don't think you need to secure it that much unless you're moving it around a ton. There's our CMOS battery, and then as far as these fans go, it's going to be very difficult to get up under there. Here's something my OCD is catching. There's no screw in the corner here. There's no screw in the corner here. There's no screw in the corner here, but there is a screw in the corner over here. really bothers my OCD. Look at the size of the heatsink behind there. Holy cow. So our M.2 drive is down there. I think the easiest way to work on this, if we were going to, likely be to take these 4 screws out and pull the board out this way and put it back in. I think that'd be easier, less effort than taking all the fans out, but we're not doing any of that. You know, there's a GPU in there, and that's probably why some of this cooling is so aggressive, is they've got to cool both the CPU and the GPU. And with a socket. Anyway, I'll just kind of hold this at some angles. You guys can kind of get an idea of seeing what I'm seeing. If you want a full breakdown of this, there's another YouTube channel called ETA Prime that did a review on this yesterday. I probably should have watched that, so I'd be better prepared for today. But I did skip through it, and I think he takes this and breaks it down entirely, in case you're curious. Because it's brand new and it's ready to go out of the box, I don't want to potentially break it. And because if it doesn't work for any reason, I won't know if I broke it or if it was sent to me broken. Not that I've ever had a broken machine sent from MinisForum, but I don't want to start today. So without causing any other potential harm, like I said, I'm just browsing. I'm going to put the covers back on. That should go on really easy. I imagine, I don't know if the sides are interchangeable or not. Let's see. Does not want to sit down. Let's try it from this side. I would lay it flat, align it, and then it should slide down. Very easily. See how that sat right down there? We'll do the same thing with this side. Like this. It's got a track it slides in, but you've got to find it. And then you've got to kind of hold it down into the track because it wants to pop out of there. And you'll know when it's in the track because it will sit flush. And I'm clearly not doing this right. I'm missing something. There it goes. And then, well, I press down on it, slide it forward. If you reach any resistance sliding this forward, it's because it's not in the track. When it's in the track, it will slide down like butter. It'll be smooth. Just like that. Do not use brute force on these mini PCs, whatever you do. And then we'll put these screws back in. These screws are a different length and width from the ones that hold the foot on, so don't get them mixed up. As you can see, these are the ones that hold the feet on, and these are the ones that hold the panel on. They're very different. And do not over tighten these screws onto the side panels because they're just plastic. We're not sealing this against, waterproofing. So once it feels snug, you don't need to take it any further. And if you feel as though you might have taken it too far, just back it off a quarter turn. It's not going to go anywhere. So easy to get into. As to whether or not how easy it is to upgrade the storage and the RAM, a little more complicated than just pulling the panel off, but not rocket science either way. Now, did this go on this way? I think so. I think I got it right the first time. If I flip this around 180 degrees, it will not align properly. Learned that lesson the hard way with another model that uses the same case from MinisForum. Okay, easy peasy. And as you can see from the front, we've got our branding, which is subtle. It's not in your face. I appreciate that. A lack of RGB is always welcome here on these parts. We're professionals and not people. Hey, professionals. Are you constipated? Sound like you might need a little bit of fiber.
No bad mouth RGB.
All right. Let me have you step back because you're standing on all of my organized cables.
Organize it on the floor.
You have your system and I have mine, okay?
Yeah. Throw it on the floor.
They're organized piles.
Organized piles.
Mm-hmm. That's the way we do it here.
That's right.
All right, we're going to go HDMI. Doesn't matter which HDMI port. We'll just pick that one because our standard PC power cable, I don't need to use the one that came in the box because quite frankly, it's a standard power cable. And if you do a close-up on the specifications on the power adapter here so the folks at home can see, should be auto switching at 240 or 110 volts. It is 3.0 amps maximum. The output is 19 volts at 12.6 amps, 239 watts. Yes, this will pull some pretty significant wattage from the wall if you're going to be gaming on it and really, pulling power through that GPU and CPU to get your super high frames per second. Under normal usage, though, you're probably going to be using less than 100 watts. So it just kind of depends on how you're using it. Sort of like a V8 engine in a car. Just because you have a V8 engine doesn't mean you're revving the engine all the time and doing 120 miles an hour every time you're behind the wheel. At least I hope not anyway. I'll grab a keyboard and a mouse.
I should install my games on it.
Yeah, you absolutely could. And see how it does on Steam. We'll only need about 3 days to download all the games.
Put WoW on it.
Yeah, that's a big test of frames per second. World of Warcraft will play on old computers without a problem. It's not exactly a...
How about Rift?
Yeah, I don't know anything about those games because, I'm over 14. All right, so right down here is our power button. You want to press it? Okay, and then I'm going to go over to our HDMI input, and you can take a break. And we're, oh, wow, look at that. Why is that so... What happened?
Huge.
Let me hit Control F. No, that's really bizarre how that's synchronized. It's purple. Is it purple on purpose, or do I have a loose cable? That should be white. Yeah, a loose cable. That was me, folks. That was me. I sometimes don't push my cables in far enough. It's a problem, and I am seeing a doctor for it. Oystein says it's back to CGA. Do you remember, Carey? Yeah, thanks for reminding me. 16 colors, baby. All right, here we go with our Windows 11 startup. You'll see I did not plug the internet into this because I don't want to be forced into creating an online Microsoft account. All right, so we're going to go English, yes. United States, yes. Keyboard layout, US, yes. Secondary language keyboard layout, no. Wi-Fi, I do not have internet. Oh, it's so nice to see that option. Thank you, MinisForum, for configuring Windows 11 in your installs without us having to bypass NRO. So we go right to the license agreement. We can create our local account. We'll just put the word user, U-S-E-R, enter, enter. I like to leave location settings on. And why is that, everybody? I'm starting to understand why singers that sing really popular songs will let the audience oftentimes sing the chorus because they're so sick of repeating themselves. Everything else we turn off. And that's just a preference. You can change that if you were to receive a computer from me and I've set those settings, they're reversible. You can change them. Not that using Shift F10 and typing in OOBE / bypass NRO is that much effort. It's just nice that we didn't have to do it. The epitome of laziness is I didn't have to push a few buttons. So I appreciate that. Yes, people are saying I leave location settings on so I can order pizza near me. Find Pizza Hut near me. If you don't have location settings on, it says, oh, I don't know where you are. Also, I like the date and time to always be adjusted automatically without me thinking about it. We all know every watch and every clock, whether it's on a computer or hanging on the wall, loses minutes over time or gains minutes over time. Computers are no different. So it'll synchronize with the time server and automatically adjust that, including any daylight saving time adjustments, all automatically. So it's a great feature to have. And Big Brother to watch me. That's right. As you can tell, as a YouTube content creator, I'm very much an exposition. What is the word? Exhibitionist. So I want the government to watch me so I can put on a show for them. I very much enjoy that, and I just appreciate that that they care enough. So if they want to watch me, my theory is let's give them something to watch. I'll show you something. All right, now I'm going to plug my internet cable into this computer since we bypassed the NRO. And we'll get an IP address and we'll hit Windows Update. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the IP address to be assigned here, I can go over to the device manager and see how things are looking in here. Device manager says we have all of our devices and drivers installed correctly, no complaints. Right click again on the start menu. We'll go to System. And System tells us we have a 12th gen Core i7-12650H, currently running at 2.3 gigahertz, but it will crank up as needed. 16 gigs of RAM, if I'm honest, feels a little light for this particular configuration. On an i5 or less, it's more typical. I think anybody buying this machine would be in your best interest to bump that to 32. I don't know that 64 would add any more for you, but certainly if you're going to game with it, I would absolutely be sure this is at 32. There's our Windows 11 Pro. It is 22H2, thank goodness. And it looks like we've received our IP address, so I will go to Settings and hit Windows Update, download and install. David Herzog says, hello, Carey, Camera Girl, and chat. Welcome in, David. Oystein says, well done, MinisForum. Agreed. Stan Aristov said, what RAM is it? Boy, oh boy, Stan, for 20 minutes, we did nothing but talk about all of the internals. All you have to do is hit that little scroll line that's at the bottom of your video. These videos, you can rewind them as though it's a recorded video. It's called DVR mode, and it allows you to go back and see all of the details that you missed. So we don't have to repeat ourselves. It's a very courteous and thoughtful thing to do. And I'm going to turn on this option so we can grab updates automatically in the background. I also want to check advanced options. I want to make sure I receive products for other Microsoft updates for other Microsoft products like Office if I decide to install that. And let's see, notify me when a restart is required. Those are the settings I've been changing on my clients' machines because they've been ignoring the restart and they leave their computers on as I instruct them to, my business clients. But I didn't mean for them to not restart them, ever. So they've been sitting waiting for a restart for over 2 weeks, and they emailed me the other day and said, computer's acting sluggish. And I said, gee, that's unusual since I just upgraded its RAM from 16 gigs to 64 gigs and upgraded the slow NVMe to an ultra-fast NVMe. The last thing I expect you to say is it's sluggish. Well, lo and behold, they haven't rebooted it in 2 weeks, and it's sitting there, and the system tray has the icon of the, hey, where did my internet connection go? Wait a minute. I'm just not plugging cables in good today, apparently. But yes, my customers are not restarting their computers once a week as I advised them to do. So I've started to set this up to set the options from the default so that they can automatically restart during inactive hours. And you can set your active hours in the advanced options settings so it knows not to restart during, say, 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Anytime after that or before that, it can restart. And then I shouldn't have those support calls anymore. And the customers, I don't have to worry about telling the customers, you know, hey, you need to do this. They've been a customer of mine for over a decade. And if they don't know by now, I'm certain I told them more than once. Some people just aren't going to do it. And so it's easier to just automate things than to try and get people to exert the effort. I don't know why. You wouldn't think that's a big deal. I guess they have other things on their mind. I want to set my tablet here to 1080. Do be sure you click on that little gear or cog icon on the YouTube video and make sure you're watching this video in 1080 if you can, because otherwise the video is not as clear or as crisp. And you may not realize or know what resolution you're watching the video in without double checking. Sarge Tech said mini PCs are becoming a trend and it makes sense. Well, they're cheaper. Let's say you want to put together a machine equivalent to this, but a desktop. The case alone, you're likely going to spend $100 to $150. Your power supply is likely going to be another $100 to $130. So you're already at a third of the cost of this, and you haven't got a CPU, a cooler, a motherboard, RAM, storage, or an operating system yet. So it's easy to see that the machines are less expensive, much more portable, take up less room, make less noise, use less power. They're cheaper to run on the electricity cost. For me as a technician, it's cheaper and easier for me to ship these. There's really nothing to break. I don't worry about hanging a 15-pound graphics card off the side of it to sag and break in time or in shipping, or a large, Noctua DH15 heatsink that's likely going to bend in half as they typically do in shipping. It's expensive, to use those Noctua coolers. They block any aesthetic that you might have put in the PC. Liquid cooling, you got to deal with the pumps wearing out and the liquid clogging up, internally, building up bacteria, evaporating over time. It's a constant maintenance issue that will not go away as long as you insist on using liquid cooling. This, you've got 4 fans that are easily replaceable. They're standard fans, not difficult to find those. If and when the time comes, you need to replace one. And it's all vented across every side panel except the front. So top, bottom, sides, and rear are all vented. So running it with the can of that air compressor that I use, that battery-operated lithium-ion USB rechargeable air duster, will blow this out super easy without having to ever open it. Okay, so while that's updating, let me go back to camera 1 and I'll put it in the corner so that you guys can see me again. I just need to grab this corner and move it up here. There we go. And so while we're waiting, let me just take a look in the chat room. Rob Foster said, Carey, I am building a new PC. I installed Windows 11, and on your recommendation, I bought a key for Windows 10. It activated my install with no issues. I also got a couple of keys for Office 2016, also with no problems. Yeah, what's great about Office 2016 is that you don't have to create a Microsoft account to activate it. There are benefits to creating the Microsoft account and activating it so that it stays tied to your account. Office 2016, Office 2019, both end-of-life support is the same as Windows 10, October 14th of 2025. Then there's Office 2021, which only gives you 1 more year of support, and its end of life is almost exactly 1 year later. So what does that leave you with regards to support in Office? Well, pretty much Office 365 and a subscription. So I suggest if you want a perpetual license, Office 2016 is the only one sold right now that you can activate that's supported by Microsoft. And it's also the cheapest at like $27. So it's a heck of a deal. I'm sure I'm going to hear from people a year from now. They're going to be like, oh, I wish I would have bought it when it stops becoming available. Burton wants to know the difference between Windows Home Pro, the difference between Windows Home and Windows Pro. Windows Pro is for professionals in an office environment using logging into servers, for example, uh, having encryption like BitLocker. There's nothing a home user should require from Pro. Any home user upgrading, paying the money and investing the time to upgrade Windows, any Windows version of Home, Windows 7 Home, Windows 8 Home, Windows 10 Home, Windows 11 Home, upgrading that to Pro is a complete waste of time and money unless you have a specific need of using BitLocker or you want to enable remote connections. But you can do all this with third-party software. So if you have to ask the question, what's the difference? It's a waste of money for you to have it. I do have a video specifically on this. If you look in my video library of over 1,500 videos that I've been making since 2008 here on YouTube, most frequently asked questions have already been addressed, and the information is as true today as when I made the video. So save your money. And if you have Windows 10 Home, and you don't need to log into a server, and you don't need to use BitLocker encryption, you don't need to waste your time and your money. It doesn't do anything for your PC in regards to performance or security. It won't work any better. Some people think, oh, it'll work better with Pro. It'll open the gates up, but no, it doesn't. It absolutely does not. But if you want to spend your money on it, I mean, go ahead. Just when it's all said and done, your computer's going to run exactly the same, and the way you use the computer will be exactly the same. The only difference is you'll be out the money and you'll be out the time. Oystein answers that question as well here in the chat. He says BitLocker encryption, remote desktop support, group policy management, a few other advanced security and business tools. That's why it's for professionals. And it costs more. When I sell computers, I'll always recommend Windows Pro on there because the cost difference, if you look at VIP CDK deals, it's a $3 price difference. And I would rather sell the computer with Windows Professional than Windows Home because sometimes the users end up needing Pro. Most of the time they don't, but it doesn't hurt them to have it. And for that $3 price difference, it also reduces my inventory to reducing the variety of products I have to stock. Feral Terminator said, I had an interesting conversation today at one of the shops I support. They bought a Wi-Fi blocker. It's a metal box to stick to their router to block Wi-Fi radiation. Yeah, human beings can be very strange creatures. We're bombarded with radio signals from AM and FM radio, transmissions from emergency services. You know, pilots piloting aircraft have to have radio signals. We have radio signals to the space station and going out to outer space. And of course, probably the worst case of radiation that we're getting is from our own sun. So if you step outside while the sun is out, you're getting an extreme dose of radiation, which is far greater than anything your router can do. Beyond that, the router usually has a button to turn off the Wi-Fi. If you're not using it, it's a security concern to have Wi-Fi available. So why have that security concern if you're not using the Wi-Fi? So you just go in and disable the radio on the router. It's just a little checkbox. Cost you nothing. But this is knowledge versus what you don't know. So a lot of people who don't know what they don't know, which is all of us, by the way, we all don't know what we don't know, will end up spending money and spending time on things that we don't understand completely, that are a complete and utter waste of time. And, you know, in the big picture of things, most of us don't learn from it. So when they put this metal box over their router, because they don't want Wi-Fi, because they didn't know, they just had to click a button, they will be satisfied that they've done something good and pat themselves on the back and encourages that behavior of reacting to ignorance without proper research and spending money that doesn't need to be spent for unnecessary items that actually don't help in the sense of any health concern of radiation, in the sense that there's so many ways that we can die. Who's to say that the person who bought that to block the radiation for health reasons doesn't get hit by a car, get food poisoning, get cancer? I mean, you got to die of something. Won't you feel silly if you die of nothing? But the fear of death, I guess, is the main motivator. And if that somehow had any correlation to living longer, I'd be first in line to buy one. But there's a lot of things out there trying to kill you, mostly other humans. Can I buy one of those to put around some people I don't like? So they make those about 5'10". That would be really good for my physical and mental health if I could buy that. Heck, I might wear one myself. Hey, you know, sucker born every day. These people that sell this stuff, anything to make a buck. They still sell those little cigarette lighter plug-ins for your car that are supposed to increase gas mileage. They had that, I forget what it was called, but it was a thing that went on the air intake of your car that would cause the air to cycle, to rotate around. They said that would improve gas mileage, when in fact all it did was screw up the engine computer and really wreak havoc with an engine. So, you know, what are you going to do? And they were sold, these devices, the Tornado or something it was called. They were sold at auto parts stores around the nation. So you think that's a legit product if it's being sold at auto parts. It's all about taking your money. That's all they care about. Speaking of taking your money, Fatal Dragons just voluntarily surrendered $5 in Super Chat. Thank you, Fatal Dragons. He says, hello, chat. Howdy, Carey. My song of the week is Long as I Can See the Light by CCR. Right on. Mick Jagger just turned 80 years old. Can you believe that? He's going to be singing Start Me Up as they're charging up the defibrillator. I want to change the power settings on this because it keeps going to sleep on me. So I'm going to go over here to full screen this on my side of things. Oops. Full screen for Carey. And then we'll go down here. Oh, look, I got the search highlights. Let's turn that off. Search permissions. Search space PE. There it is. Right up here, suggested. That's what I want. I don't have to type the whole thing in. Turn off content suggestions. So when I click this off, watch this down here. Bye-bye. And while we're in here, we'll type in power. We want to look for power plan, power, sleep, and battery settings. Power mode. This isn't the screen. Let's type in edit power plan. There it is. Click on that. That's what I wanted. I'll tell it to turn off the display after 3 hours. And I do not want the computer to go to sleep. Sleep is for saving batteries. If you have a tablet, a laptop, you definitely want to enable sleep mode if you've walked away from it. You don't want the batteries to drain out because you forgot that you walked away from it. When it's plugged in, the only thing really taking up a lot of power on a desktop is your screen. So to prevent burn-in on your screen and to save a little money on your electric bill, I have it turn off the screen only. Now, these screens are much more power efficient than the old CRTs of yesteryear. However, the money that you're saving, well, it may not be as much as putting to sleep a CRT. As I mentioned, it does prevent burn-in. So, but sleep mode, a lot of people have trouble waking from sleep mode properly. It's a constant support aggravation because there's really no answer to it. Sometimes video drivers impede the effectiveness of sleep mode from working correctly. And if the manufacturer of the drivers isn't updating the drivers, there's nothing you can do about it but disable sleep mode. So just don't enable it to begin with. Now, if you're using sleep mode on a computer you plug in and you're not having any problems with it, well, I'm not suggesting you change it, but I would not go down that road and experiment with it unless you're ready to experience problems with the computer waking up. Unless, of course, we're saving batteries. Otherwise, it's not worth the hassle, in my opinion. LRCX wants to know, why do the cumulative updates always say preview? Well, they don't always. So the cumulative updates are the updates that are all combined into one. And when they say preview, those are the cumulative updates for next month. And you can go ahead and get a preview of them, install them now. So you don't have to, they're optional. I always grab all updates regardless. That's just what my OCD demands of me. And I've never had any negative consequences from doing so. Keep the computers updated rather than having them remain vulnerable to an exploit. Microsoft releases updates every month, so it makes sense that every month there's a new preview cumulative update, or every other month, depending on how often they combine them, converge them. Ron Barnes says he's going to be 81 years old in October. Well, you're a year ahead of my father. He will turn 80 the first week of November. Look at you go. And right on top of the technology. There's a lot of people in your generation that say that technology stuff, that's just beyond me. And, it's really an attitude problem. It's not an age problem. So I'm always delighted to see people who are at least 10 years or more older than me that are embracing the technology. And I've met quite a few who have embraced it far beyond as much as I have. I had a gentleman, when I went over to his house, he's still using an Amiga ST, and he had all of these different drives for converting things and cables strewn about everywhere. And I said, you need to let me come over someday and clean all this cabling out. It took me a while to kind of figure out how to configure everything for him, because he was such a demanding and high-end user. He had a configuration more complex than my own, and very much admired him. He was a very nice and very smart man. Joseph Hawkins says, still young at 74 years of age. Hey, agreed. Zach Bischoff said he's turning 20 in September. Bull142 says 65 in December. Cliff Reel says he's 85 and still learning. Dick Poverman says, my mother is 90 years old and loves tech. She got a smartphone before I did. Hey, that's awesome. Eileen Novak said, I am a spry 62. Sherry McFarland said, I agree, I'm 65 and very much into tech for many years. Peter Lycock said he's going to be 72 in August. See that? He's just a kid. Jim KJ3N says, 20 years old. Get off my lawn, kid. Sarge Tech said, yes, some of us boomers are good with technology and help others who do not want to understand it. Yeah, I'm glad that you can relieve me of some of that burden. Thank you for that. Speaking of burden, Matthew Burden's turning 40 in November. Hey, the big 4-0. Davis Parsons says he's 74. Patrick Manny says he's 78. Paul Howe says he's 63. William Lynn said he's 19 and he can't learn in college. Hate that, but have to stay. Elijah Dickens says 71 and still got it. Andy Kane says he's 43. Leslie Cavan says 55 and still learning. Dave Hall said 76 in 2 days and still learning after 50 years in electronics. Happy early birthday. Everybody say happy birthday to Dave Hall. George Ferrugia says he's going to be 78 in March. Do we have more people in their 70s in my chat room than any other age group? That's fascinating. Sam Lazar says 23 next June. That's a long way to go. William Gale, 59 this Sunday, last of the 50s. Happy early birthday to you as well. Attitude is everything. Douglas Burchell said, I'll be 52 in December and still learning. Ah, you're just a kid. Sarge Tech said he's 64. Dustin Fuller says he's 65. Alan Linda says he's 70. You can't be 70. I've met Alan. I think he's fibbing. Thomas Backenstow says 61. Gary Tatum says he'll be 59. Sue Cool Lawrence says 67 last month. 3D Everything said he turned 68 this month. William Lynn said younger people have to work, no time for YouTube. Oh, you must know different younger people than me. Gary Randall said he's going to be 54 next Friday. Wow, a lot of August birthdays coming up here. Blackjack Yak says 33 here, not many in their 30s here. Mr. Ed says he's going to be 72 in 2 weeks. Gil Garcia says he's 53. Jim KJ3N says, as of yesterday, I've completed my 63rd trip around the sun. Well, happy belated birthday to Jim KJ3N. LRCX said he's 68. Trips Bunch says 94 in 3 weeks. Get out of here. That can't be real. Is that real? Charles Eslick says he'll be 70 this February. Blackwatch 72 in October. Alan Shaver at 68. Shamim Kashviras 39. Austin Grace says he's going to be 36 in January. So we have one teenager. Is it just William Lynn is the only teenager watching? You know, I just turned 40 15 years ago. Kevin thinks those detents are in place to align the foot at the bottom to lock it in place, and then the screws secure it into place. I think you're right. I do think that's what they're for. Zach Bischoff said, I'm still technically in my teens at 19. Well, there's nothing technical about it. It's you are or you aren't in your teens. Alan says, happy 40th for the 15th time, Carey. Mark Gaines says he's going to be 55 this Tuesday. Right on. You're catching up to me, Mark. Blackwatch said I celebrated my 22nd birthday 50 years ago. Blackjack says we should do a poll. You know, the YouTube analytics on my YouTube creator page does show me what you guys have set your age to be when you created your YouTube account. I just don't know how truthful that information is, right? It determines, it asks you if you're male or female or, you know, a pumpkin. It asks you, I think there's a race, an ethnicity question, and they're optional. You don't have to answer them. And then, of course, age. And as long as you're over the age of 13, that's all they're really much requiring age for. Lee Goldstein said, 70 and hate being old. What don't you like about the evolution that you've experienced? I think that age is a great thing. All I have to do is watch the news, and every day there's somebody that hasn't made it as far as I have. Not to mention, some people I know, unfortunately, have already, this one reason or another, aren't here anymore. So I think it's kind of a mixed blessing to continue to appreciate the limited time we have here and look forward to tomorrow instead of just thinking about the old days. I know that the 80s, the 1980s for me were a terrible time. Very, very, very difficult time. And, you know, very much trying to survive, literally. Bullies wanting to beat me up. And if a bully wants to beat you up, if you've ever been bullied, how do you know when they're going to stop? So it's as though somebody's threatening to murder you. And if you don't have enough strength to fight back, as I didn't at that time, I ran. And I ran so fast they couldn't catch me. And no adults would help me. So it was pretty much fight or flight, live or die. I don't want to go back to living like that ever again. That lack of self-confidence, the lack of being able to stand up for myself, the dependence on others to come and rescue me, and since nobody ever did, literally nobody ever did, I ran. I would not want to go back to that. Not enough money in the world. I'm glad to have it behind me. And I'm glad that I survived it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here doing this now. Sorry, getting a little philosophical. The computer is almost ready to reboot. I'm going to grab a colder Gatorade while we're waiting. Gamma Girl's 29. Well, on the planet that she's from, she's 29. Bob R. said, I'm on the right side of the grass. You know, I reached out to our friend John Jack Wilson because I haven't seen him in the chat room in a while. And he's had a couple of incidents where he's fallen and, you know, had to go to the hospital. And I'm just hope that something like that didn't happen again and making sure he's okay. So I reached out in an email and said, hey, just checking up on you. And well, he's been busy running around, and his kids are keeping him busy. They have their own struggles. And I said, hey, keeping busy is good. But he said, yeah, I'm still on this side of the grass. Yeah. So when you're checking in on somebody, it's like poking them with a stick. Hey, are you dead? Is everything okay? As long as everything's okay, I can rest easy. I was getting worried. I hadn't seen you or heard from you in a while. I just wanted to make sure you weren't in a hospital somewhere or worse. Ben Laird with a £5 contribution joins us from Scotland and says, here is my late fee. Thank you, Ben. Sarge Tech says, well, the computer's updating. We are rebooting our lives and grateful for every day we're still above ground. Can I get it? Amen. There you go. Bull142 says, still picking daisies, not pushing them up. That's the attitude. Frank Jimmy says, whatever happened with Catherine Anna Hauserman? I don't know. Like, so most people don't check in with me. I think Catherine lives in Colombia, so it's not exactly like we're neighbors. I don't know. I think I've seen her on Doug Bett's live channel during his live session not too long ago. Okay, we ready for a restart? I think we are. Let's go ahead and, oopsie, start now. Let those updates take place. Lost Kitty Cat's email address. Chris Garrett confirms Catherine was on Doug's live chat a few weeks ago. I thought I saw her in there. But you can probably reach out to her on Facebook, as far as I know. She still has a Facebook page that I assume she's checking regularly, and you can message her there. Bill Garcia says, what happened to Maddie? I have no idea who you're talking about. I don't know anybody named Maddie. LRCX said Catherine was in our chat room a couple of weeks ago. Oh, Madi. Madi still maintains membership here to the channel. He still supports the channel. I think life's been keeping him busy. I talked to him about 6 weeks ago. Just had a lot of stuff going on. But he was another one I checked in with because I hadn't heard from him in a while. And everything's good. So as long as everything's good and he's just busy, hey, that's good news. It's a good excuse to not be in the chat room because you're living life. It's great. Powell House says Catherine has a YouTube channel. She does? That's news to me. Thomas Backenstow says, where is Mitch? I have no idea. He doesn't check in with me, and I don't ask. But last we spoke, he was taking his motorcycle out on a ride out in the early morning before the sun got too hot. I think we've had 26 days in a row of 110 degrees Fahrenheit or above. It looks like we're going to go through the entirety of July with no temperature below 110. We did get a monsoon storm in last night, very large winds and rain. We didn't get much rain here. We got a lot of wind. Ripped the roofs. What's that? Oh, the night before last night. And that brought the temperatures down into the 70s, but it was really humid. It was like Florida. Really, really, air was thick with humidity. But it did drop those temperatures, and it was the first time we had a night below 90. It usually doesn't get below 90 at night. It hasn't been this month, so that significantly brought the temps down. And we might have some more storms coming, and I hope we do, because that is a great relief from the heat. Alan Linda says, Mitch is in Scottsdale. How do you know he's in Scottsdale? Avery says, Carey, check your email. Ron Barnish says, Mitch is on the actors picket line. Yeah, I don't think Mitch is going to go out in this heat. I don't think so. All right, we'll check the email. Oh, looks like I missed a couple of things here. Hey, camera girl. Amazon says they delivered that camera. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I ordered a mouse for a customer and had it delivered to their address, so it must be the mouse. Nick Caffrey sends $10.53 via PayPal. Holy cow, we have an extremely generous gift card from Rob Foster. Does that say what I think it says?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't even know what to say.
How about thank you?
Well, thank you doesn't seem to be adequate. Holy cow. Several $100s from Rob Foster. What an incredibly generous gift. So what I'm saving up for right now, I think I've got about $800 in Amazon gift cards right now. And I am considering yet one more camera, the updated Panasonic. However, I'm on the fence depending on how the Sony works out. Because if the Sony doesn't work out, I'm going to send the Sony in and exchange it for the Panasonic. But in the meantime, I'm a long way away from the $2,300 the Panasonic costs. And so what I'm trying to do is just kind of hoard those gift cards up until I have enough to, immediately select that optional camera as a secondary camera or potentially as a main camera. This camera here, it needs to be retired. It's had a good long life. I've been using it since Studio A, and I don't like how it flattens everything. Everything looks bigger than it really is. Even these mini PCs, people are shocked to see how small mini PCs really are compared to how this camera makes them look. People are often shocked at how skinny I am compared to how fat I look on camera. Not that I'm as skinny as I used to be, but I'm definitely not that big. Do you see the email from Synology? Have you addressed it? Okay, thank you. I'm letting Camera Girl handle some of the talk with companies that want us to feature their product. We're in talks right now with Synology, and I hope to get their latest home NAS in for review. And it'll be the first time I get to work with Synology where I'm not going out and buying the product. Lotto Win with a $50 super chat says, Happy Friday, Carey. Thank you for your continued mentorship. Would it be all right to ask your opinion on which mini PC with an Intel CPU that you've reviewed might have the fastest frames per second for AA gaming? No, AAA. Hold that thought for a second. The reason I wanted to check my email was Avery asked me to check my email. And there it is. Avery Ramsdorf sent an Amazon gift card for $8. And says, hope you enjoy the Amazon gift card. So again, thank you, Avery, for supporting the channel. Thanks to all of you who support the channel. Now, which mini PC with an Intel CPU would be good for, I'm assuming you mean AAA gaming, triple title? I don't know what AA gaming is. Is there, okay, there's only one that I can think of. But you better be sitting down when I show you the price. Let's go back over to the MinisForum website. Or, better yet, turn on the window capture. Let's turn this off for a second. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to turn that off. I want to start Windows Update since it's rebooted. That way we can kill two birds with one stone here and make sure we get all of our updates. I also want to check any advanced options here for, yes, there are 2 optional updates available. Oh, that's weird. I don't have an AOC screen. And then there's our optional preview. Remember, the previews aren't required. I just like to have all the updates. Now, over to, turn that off. Let's turn that off. So over here at MinisForum under all products, gaming. These are all the MinisForum machines designed for gaming and at different various types of games. So you're going to run the gamut with regards to price and performance depending on the types of games you play. You know, that little EM680 was quite impressive and it's super, super tiny. And ironically, the one I wanted to recommend to you is not in this list, and it's probably the best machine. Oh, because we're in AMD. I see. Let's filter that. Why does it just say AMD? Where's our Intel solutions? Well, we'll go over here to all products. We'll choose, let's go back to the home page. This is the one here. This is the NUC Xi5 and Xi7. These have an NVIDIA RTX 3070, or in the case of the i5, it's a 3060, I think. That's the laptop version of the RTX NVIDIA 3070. You can pick this up as a bare bone system, meaning you put your own RAM in it, put your own drive in it. And for $850, it's a good deal. It's a really good deal because normally to be able to play these games on a desktop, you're likely spending a minimum of $1,200, and especially if you're going to put that 3070 in there, closer to $1,400. Now, I do have a video on this. If we go over to got to use the right keyboard. Go over to YouTube. Hey, this looks like a good video. And let's look at MinisForum NUC i7X. There's our review, which I did 7 months ago. And I would recommend you watch it. It's a 4-hour-long live stream. And I do the unboxing, and I've got RAM and the solid state drive. I ordered it bare bones. MinisForum actually sent it to me on my request. And I show the inside of it. It's essentially a laptop. It's like they took a laptop motherboard that's got a place for a battery to go. It's got a connector for a screen. And they just took, they left all that disconnected and just put the laptop motherboard in this tall, skinny case. Kind of scrubbing through this because apparently Camera Girl wasn't here to film this. I guess you weren't here to be my close-up camera, so I have to walk up to the camera. When I reviewed this. Yeah. The Nook i7X. You weren't doing your job.
Was I here?
I don't think you were here.
But kicked me out because you were so sick.
Yep. Sick, all right. Sick in the head. Let's see. Camera 1. And what? But for Intel, I don't think you can do better for a mini PC for gaming than the Nook i7X. And look around at some of the other YouTube reviewers. Rob Tech does a great review of it. I think ETA Prime might have done one as well. And Phil over at the name of his channel. But, you know, they'll actually run some games on it. I don't know if they're games you play and how relevant that the results will be for how you intend to use it, but there's nothing on the market that competes with this. Like, it's in its own category. It's half a laptop. It's essentially what it is. Doug Coles is going to be 77 years old in September, and he loves technology. It keeps his mind active. Absolutely. Oystein says Intel doesn't support AAA games. Well, it is an NVIDIA RTX card on there. Ella Linda says Mitch Morrison's website said he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah, but we don't know that's where he's at right now. He could be at the bar. He could be out of state on vacation. He could be in Colorado. He could be at a grocery store. He could be visiting a friend somewhere. We don't know where. Someone said, "Where's Mitch?" They didn't ask where he lives. I might be too literal sometimes. All right, let's go back over to full screen for me one more time so I can see the screen better. Oh, that's so much better. And we're going to hit Windows Update again, and we should be about out of updates here. One would hope by now. That's actually not too bad, right? We've seen machines that come in and they still have Windows 21 H2. And 23 H2 will probably be out this fall. Probably around October, I would guess. All right, will you check the front door for me? I think our new camera is arriving. So that's installing there. And then I'll go back this way. Barry Russ with a $5 super chat says, howdy CH in chat. Hey, welcome in, Barry.
So light.
Oh, it is very light, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, one way to find out. It's going to be like Christmas here. You know what? I have to give a shout out to our good friend Peter Laycock, who expedited the process of me getting this camera. As I was kind of starting to collect the money, he gave us a very generous Amazon gift card that, well, made it possible for me to buy this much sooner than I thought I was going to be able to. Wow, that's a small box for such an expensive thing. There it is. Yeah, that's the camera. All right. Yeah, it's just it's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, I'll tell you that. Yeah, compared to the Canons we're using, this thing's not very large. Most of it's instruction manual. Let's see here. Let's go full screen here for a moment on camera 1. If we keep this, I'm going to name this camera Buster. This is going to be, instead of camera 1, it'll be Buster Cam. Of course, I said that on the other, far more expensive camera that we're not using, but I do have plans to start to use.
Oh my gosh, that's so small.
Actually, it's about the same size as the camera we're using.
What?
Yeah.
It's smaller. Oh, it's because there's no lens.
Oh, it's got a, I'm sure it's got a lens hood. I usually use the lens hoods to prevent any glare from the lights. It should also have a handle. Yeah, or there's an eye cup. So if you're shooting outside, it can be hard to see the viewfinder. And this is going to be the handle for the microphone inputs, which is very similar to the Canon design. This is optional on these cameras if you want it to be more portable. How does that work?
You want to switch to the portable and hook that up?
I might. I want to just take a quick look at how
Okay. Call me when you need me.
Sony does things a little bit differently. And I have never had a Sony camcorder before. I've only had Sony DSLRs. So they have this little plastic piece that's covering the hot shoe here. But it looks like this slides in. So maybe it goes the other way. No, it definitely has to go in this way. Most people would read the directions, but it's me we're talking about. I wonder if there's a cover on this as well. Did they cover it? They did. Weird. It's like they're little dust covers. Hmm. And you just tighten these 2 screws down. And then we have all of our audio controls. This is very much the same as the handle on the Canon we're using now. And then we have 2 XLR microphone inputs, which I'm using on the Panasonic because the audio on the Panasonic camera is so much better than the audio processing, the microphone pickups on the Canon. So if this can do both, well, then I can replace that Panasonic camera with the other one I was talking about, and hence the full picture of what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's our lens hood and, oh, a battery. It's a hot shoe for something, I don't know what. And even though I usually keep these plugged in at all times, I like to keep the batteries in them, just in case we have a power outage. Doesn't prevent the camera from recording, although I'm not recording on the camera, so I guess in retrospect, I don't need to do that anymore. We've got a remote control, power cable, power supply. Obviously, we're going to need. And we have a USB cable. And the lens hood right here, which is what I was looking for. I want to keep all these little plastic bags because if this camera is not as good as I'm led to believe it is, it's going to go back to Amazon. I love that 30-day return policy when making a purchase on something where the only way I'm going to know the answer is to buy it and use it. How does one open the lens hood on this? Oh, it's just got a cover like a DSLR. It doesn't have the barn doors. Interesting. Okay, so far so good. I need to grab a shoe for the tripod head. So did they require you to sign it? Interesting. It works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Put the shoe on it. Hey. Kind of anxious. Just not sure we're going to get a very good picture quality if I hook this up right now as it is. I really should plug it in and let the battery charge on it. And let's see what I'm missing here in the chat room. Joseph Hawkins with a $5 New Zealand contribution. Of course, Joseph watches us from New Zealand. Thank you, Joseph. Old Man 55 says, time to break out that silver Sharpie and label that power supply. Oh, that's a good. Usually Sony is good about labeling their stuff, though. Let's see. Does Sony label their stuff? Yeah, it says Sony on it. It says Sony on both sides. Sony's real good about that. And what a bizarre looking power cable. I've never seen a connector that looks like this before. So there's no way you're going to plug this into anything but what it's designed for, because I've never seen a power connector like this. So even if it didn't say Sony on both sides, Sony there, so Sony there as well. Big letters. And then even that little power plug has the flat edge, which isn't as common as what I normally use. Well, that's a Mickey Mouse connector. So in some ways, Sony's proprietary nature can be beneficial. In other ways, it's a hassle when they charge a lot of money because they do things their own way that nobody else does. And so finding an alternative other than an actual Sony branded component can be very difficult. And as such, you're left having to pay, whatever Sony wants. Now, what's interesting is even though that has that flat edge, they're not even using it. There's no flat edge on this. So I'm not sure why that exists. And let's see, let's go over to the Panasonic camera. The colors aren't going to be as good. So bear with me for a second and go to that second camera. No, I'm all right. I think I am going to hook this up. I'm just too anxious. Also, what do we have for an HDMI port on here? It's pretty bad when I set my glasses down and I can't find my glasses. Ah, HDMI, is it full size? It is a full size HDMI out back here. Hallelujah. What is this? Oh, it's got SDI out. Well, that's why it was so much money. Focus magnifier button. Iris push auto. Cool, cool. Got controls on the handle. And yeah, let's take a look at what this is going to look like. So I'm going to step over here, and this may be just a slight detour from our regularly scheduled content, because I might end up going right back to this camera. Sometimes out of the box, we'll be impressed, and other times it's going to need a little massaging. Which one's it going to be today? So here is the camera we've been shooting with. This is our main camera. And I'll go ahead and shut it off, close the hood. And I've left the boom on here, but I don't use it. It's sort of an emergency if we lose microphone. And I'm going to set this somewhere where I can't knock it over and break it, because that would ruin my day if I were to do that. So I'll put it way over here. And then I can grab the Sony and its power cable. We'll get it up on the tripod and see what it's going to look like. This is exciting. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. It's down on the tripod. It fit like a glove, and it does. I have almost run out of power connectors here. I think I have one plug left. So we'll run power into the camera with that very unique power plug. And then plug it into the wall for the very first time. Find my HDMI cable. Here. Well, everything's fitting like it should. Good start. And how do I turn it on? I don't know where the power button is. Start stop button. Perhaps if I just open the door, does that turn it on? No. Oh, it does turn it on by opening the door. Okay, let's go through this setup together. Kind of curious if OBS will pick up these setup screens. It does. All right. So, let's see here. Not a touch screen, apparently. I've got to use a joystick here. GMT -7, daylight savings off. See, this camera was built in 2017, so it's defaulting 2017 date. What's the date? The 28th? Is that what I said it was? Where's my cellular phone when I need it? Time doesn't say it is here. 2:44 Phoenix time, so I'll just put it to 2:45. By the time I get over here and adjust it,
Should be pretty much dead on. Okay, zoom that in a little bit. Put it down, zoom it in some more. Now, I imagine that's straight out of the box. That's not, I haven't touched any settings. And even out of the box, it's defaulting to not showing us the on-screen menus. So with everything on auto, what do you guys think? Does that look better than the Canon? Is it sharp? I haven't touched anything. Like I can get in there and I can refine it. But Sony, just out of the box, their color management seems so much better than Canon's. Of course, switching over to that Panasonic, right? I mean, that's a heck of a difference where the Panasonic is very much washed out. And I've got to massage the settings to bring the color out in it. Whereas this is just straight out of the box. Joseph Hawkins thinks it looks the same. David Dix at Rock City PC says it looks great for default settings. It's really sharp and much wider, much more realistic. Is it wider? Could be. David Graham thinks it needs more color. I do tend to crank up saturation on color when I do photography and things. But, you know, I think that color looks pretty real to me without dressing it up. Interesting. Are some settings here we can play with. I think we've got everything on auto. Annual. Oh, wow. What a difference. See if I have my white card and I can manually white balance it. I put it on manual settings. You just here. Yeah, well, give me a second. If we did the gray, set that as white. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to just put it back to auto for right now. It's doing a really good job. It's going to let me adjust anything with auto set. You know what? Let me just try one thing. Let's go back to shutter speed. So bringing that shutter speed down brightens the picture. That's 30 frames per second. And if we white balance, that's an interesting look. A little bit darker. And mess with the ISO settings here and bring the ISO up 3 dB on the ISO. Ooh, wow. Very interesting. I'm still learning how to change these settings here, so bear with me for a second. Oh, it's giving me a warning I didn't put a memory card in it. Back to Iris. Over then to this setting. Come on. Is it doing this to me? Predefined. Raise or lower that number. I know there's a place in here where I can change this setting and I don't know where it is. Ah. Well, it must want me to use another. Oopsie. I made it worse. Leave that one. Leave that. Leave that. Interesting. Somewhere in here, there's a adjustment I can do. Let's go back to a white screen and hit the white balance. Interesting. Made it very yellow. So I'm not sure where the setting is for me to manually set my color temperature. I'm sure there's a menu button here somewhere. It's not seeing it. Oh, there it is, menu. That's what I want. White balance preset. Okay, manual, white balance temperature. Where do I set it? $6,500 is way too hot. Let's see. Almost done. I'm only going to play with this for a little bit. Come on. Why is it doing this? White balance. Okay. Up and down, just change it to auto. And when I push in, it's setting it. So there's got to be some other modifier button I have to use to change that Color temperature, white balance, it says 6,500. I need to cut that in half. Hmm. Not quite sure how I adjust that. It's giving me buttons for everything where I want to be. Huh. White balance. Now, times like that, I got to read the directions, I guess. So I'm going to leave that as it is for just a moment because I want to take a look at the manual real quick because I'm sure it's something simple and I'm that close to having it set up. I'd hate to stop now when we're that close. Let's see. Yeah, it's very, very warm. Instruction manual. Explain to your kids what that's used for. This thing's got wireless networking built into it. White balance temperature set, page 110. WB temp set is in the menu. I can't. Sets the color temperature value when preset white balance is set to menu. Okay. Well, there's got to be a way to get at it from the main menu without going into all the submenus. But if that's what I got to do, I'll just give that a shot real quick, and then we'll get back on with reviewing this MinisForum. Let's see. We're going to go back to balance manual preset outdoor level temp set. Yeah. Okay. Should be good. I think I'm going to leave that right where it is, and we'll just keep going now with the new Sony camera. And the colors, they look pretty good. Don't touch it. All right, did I look like I lost some weight? I don't think so. He's back. So the other thing that's a little challenging is I need to move the tripod system about 2 feet, 3 feet to the left because I have to turn the camera slightly to center it. And what that does is it makes things look like they're tilted. So what I'm gauging to determine whether or not the camera is straight is looking at the table down here and making sure that about as much of the edge is showing from this side of the screen to the other side of the screen. because the camera is on an angle, it's very difficult to eliminate the illusion that it's tilted when in fact it's just angled. And the best way to fix that is simply move all the, the monitor and screen that I use when I'm monitoring the live broadcast and controlling OBS, move that 2 feet to the left, move the tripod 2 feet to the left. So camera should be right here. Instead, the camera's right there. And because of that angle, it makes everything look a little tilted when in fact it's completely straight. It's frustrating. So Mark Leibowitz says, that looks so realistic. It seems like I should be able to reach through my screen and touch that MinisForum. So is this an improvement? Do you guys think this is better than the Canon camera? Paul says it's definitely a wider picture. That's interesting. You think it's a better picture? Russell Stewart says when you move fast, it keeps refocusing. So that's something else I can change on the camera is it has multi-focus points. I can either disable and go to manual focus, or I can go to a single point focus. If that continues to be a problem, I'm moving around. I don't see myself going out of focus, and it should be able to put the priority of focus on when it detects eyeballs, not necessarily on product. Now, of course, I can dial this camera in much more so than what I've done now is very basic and very simple. Obviously, for me to sit down and really start to fine tune things, I can probably pull a better picture quality out of it. If I go over to my filters on OBS, I'm kind of curious. Oh, that's not good.
Better, only could say it's but we're all shadows.
Yeah, I might have to adjust the studio lighting.
That camera's really good.
I'll give that a shot and see if the colors look a little better there. Just using a little color correction in OBS. I usually end up making the picture worse when I do that, but see what happens. So again, that's just fresh out of the box. I've never seen one of these cameras in real life before, and that's how fast it was for me to set up. And I'm not a camera guru where I know all this stuff off the top of my head. So I think this is an improvement. I am noticing, yeah, you're mentioning the shadows here, maybe some lighting adjustments, but the way Sony handles color just seems superior, at least in the sense of live production. When we do things where we're filming and we do color correction in the video editing or the post-production process, then of course we could just shoot everything flat, or, in Canon's case, we could shoot it in S-Log and then apply our color filter to a neutral image, which is traditionally how it's done, where the big guys do it. But of course, things that are live broadcasts, like sporting events, your local news stations, those things are often, they don't have a post-production, so they have to be able to do all that live. And I'm not quite sure exactly how they do that, but yeah, we're off to a good start, and we'll just test this out for the remaining of the video. Now, does anybody have any questions with regards to the MinisForum PC? Frank Jimmy says, now I can see your tan. Yeah, you can tell I wear a t-shirt all the time. My farmer tan going. Peter said the camera seems sharper. Yeah, I think it does too. It does seem more vivid. And this is my experience with the close-up camera that Camera Girl uses with that Sony. The way Sony is processing the image, every camera manufacturer has their own proprietary way of processing the image. Panasonic does it one way, Sony does it one way, Canon does it one way, Nikon does it one way. And then, of course, you've got different lenses. Sony likes to use the Zeiss lenses, is it? Canon uses typically Canon lenses, although I think on the other camcorder, is it a Canon lens on there? Sometimes you'll see Leica lenses, Carl Zeiss. On the Canon, yeah, they're not promoting a lens manufacturer, so I suspect it's their own lens. This has been a great camera. We were using this over at Studio A. Actually, I have 3 of them because we were doing, at one point, a 3-camera setup at Studio A, left, middle, and right. So we have a matching set so that all the colors and lighting would match. It's very difficult to align that with different makes and models of cameras, I learned the hard way. And of course, this handle comes off, just like you saw the handle come off on the other one, so you can have it more portable. You'll see I've got an extended life battery on here, although I've been plugging it in and using it plugged in for, well, since we started here at Studio B anyway. The Boom Rode microphone I added, I typically used it only when I was doing the Subaru car repair videos, so I could pick up Mike's voice because I did not have him microphoned because he's getting oil and grease all over everything. I didn't want him ruining a $600 microphone. So I would use I would use 2 cameras. One I would hold get all the close-up shots by hand, and this one would sit on a tripod with the boom mic picking up all the audio. And then I would combine both sets of footage and time them so they were in sync so that I could pull at the very least the audio from this camera. And then at times even cut away to the shots from this camera. Well, the majority of the shots came from the handheld camera, but keeping the audio, because if you switch audio source, oh, it's going to be terrible and the playback will be awful. People won't be able to stand it. So yeah, on the way. Lou Greenia says, in his opinion, he thinks the colors are truer and sharper. I appreciate the feedback. That little plastic door can go back on. And I can go set this back over here before I drop it. It's an expensive thing to drop. Okay. Once again, a massive thank you to Peter Laycock, who contributed a significant amount for us to be able to not have to wait a couple of months before we can purchase it, and enabled us to purchase it sooner. And I was hoping it was going to arrive this morning, and I could have done all of that. Is what it take, half hour, maybe 20 minutes, half hour, just to dial it in good enough and be able to do the first broadcast with it. I have a lot of learning on this. There's a lot of buttons I haven't touched yet, but I will. I also want to see what happens if we move our microphones over to its input and see if it handles the audio better. If it does, then I don't need to use the Panasonic camera for audio anymore, but could actually utilize a secondary camera. Once again, either a more up-to-date Panasonic to see if they have improved the quality, or maybe an older cinema camera. I'm thinking from Canon, like one that's 10 years old that only does 1080, that only has a single point of focus. I'm thinking the newer cameras may be harder for me to use for this type of content, whereas the older cameras might be better aligned for this type of content. It's a theory I have, so I've been looking on eBay for something used just to test my theory out. Stan Ristoff says it's way sharper. That camera is a keeper. Right on. Gary wants to know if I'm going to run Prime 95 on this to see how the cooling is. Sure, we can do that. We can also run Crystal Dismark and see what kind of performance we're getting out of the onboard NVMe drive. So let's switch back over to HDMI input. I've got to go full screen over here on my side. Looks like we're all up to date here. And we'll go over to the flash drive I just plugged in, and we'll copy over, let's see, still disk mark. CPU-Z in there just for the heck of it. C out here. And Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer. I think that's every. Eject flash drive. Let's start with running the optimizer. Let's get that out of the way. This is an optimizer, not a customizer, but an optimizer that I had built for me for being able to consistently tune my computers that I build and service from Nick over at D7X Tech. And you guys said, hey, are you going to sell that? And, you know, I didn't build it to sell it, but I thought, hey, why not? You know, I already paid for the development of it. And ever since then, you've been able to spend, I think it's $7 over at d7xtech.com to purchase it. Now, what's happening here is quite interesting, where it's not initializing the main screen properly. So that's unusual, but you know, I don't really care. And we might be able to adjust something in the BIOS to change that, but it's really a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Some synchronization isn't happening correctly with the capture card. So with the optimizer run, the next thing I can do is run Crystal Disk Mark and see what kind of performance numbers we get. I'm sure that this would benefit from having like one of those Fangjing 2 terabyte Gen 4 drives that'll hit 7,300 megabytes per second on the reads. I imagine this is probably going to be around 5,000, because usually the manufacturers include sort of a mid-range, more budgety NVMe drive. They don't usually put high-end drives in because it adds to the cost of the machine. So yeah, it's pretty much doing what I would expect it to, and pretty much that's universal across all manufacturers. Obviously, there'll be a few exceptions, but overall, they don't put in the cheapest one. They don't put in the most expensive high performance one. They go right for the middle. And that's usually where your best bang for the buck is, in order to give you enough storage at enough speed at that lower price. That's something you can easily change and upgrade yourself. Stan Aristov with £4.99 says, Carey, have a Gatorade on me. Thank you, Stan. I think I will. What graphics card could you place in there? It's already got a graphics card installed, and it's an MXM graphics card, which is what laptops use. When you see a laptop has a discrete graphics card, like a lot of Alienware and higher end gaming laptops, they're using in many cases an MXM graphics card. And you can Google MXM graphics card to learn more about them. Whether or not we would be able to upgrade this graphics card to a different one, I don't know anything about that, but I also know that it's already got a graphics card in there, so why would I want to change it? What model is the camera? That is a, what do they call it? EXW Z90. E like Peter, X as in X-ray, W as in Willow, Z, Z, 90. Winston Liu contributed $2 Canadian, said video image incoming to Vancouver, Canada. Worldwide. The Greeniest said Carey needs to have a camera sale for the retired ones he's not using. I usually end up using them for other, like the really inexpensive tiny handheld cameras I used back in 2010. Those I'm using as, you know, they're cameras I'll sit in the middle of the road and have Subaru Mike drive over them. And if he makes a mistake and it runs it over, you know, so be it. But I wouldn't use an expensive camera for that. I also like to have at least one camera as a backup. So yeah, I'm not willing to part with my cameras yet. Thank you for the contribution, Winston. So 47.95 on the sequential write speed, 35.33 on the sequential write speed. So these are not record-shattering numbers. They're typical and what's to be expected on kind of a grade of equipment that is typically used by system integrators, as I mentioned, to give you the best value. Usually when you want the highest performance, you get the worst value. So obviously you don't want to undermine the power of everything else like the CPU and the GPU by putting in a storage drive that's too slow. For me personally, I think 64 gigs of RAM and a high-speed Gen 4 NVMe drive like the Western Digital SN850X, or if you're more budget-minded, that Fengjing drive would be a worthwhile investment into a machine of this much power. But it's not shoddy, you know, it's not like it's bad the way it is, but it could be better. We could get this number up to over 7,000 on this side. So good 40% increase there. Now, when it comes to Prime 95, let's go ahead and close this out. We've got those numbers now. We'll bring up the hardware monitor here. This is all portable software. Nothing needs installation, so I'm not leaving anything in the registry. I just need the sensors on this. Okay. So let's move this over here. Extend this further down. And we'll start Prime 95 up using all the default settings on Prime 95 26.6. Once again, I don't install anything. I'm only running the portable version. And our clock was about at 30 seconds down here when we started the test. I am seeing we've already hit 88 for some reason. That doesn't sound right. I'm not hearing anything. The system's very, very quiet. These temperatures are a bit concerning. The fans are running. They are running, and they're totally silent, so I'm happy with that. Huh. It's not operating in a way that would have you think it's that warm. So that's surprising. Charlie B says, 74 years young, in honor of your birthday and mine, I have sent 2 small gift cards from Amazon I've been watching for several years, but I don't comment much. Thank you for the education. Well, happy birthday to Charlie B. I'll check my phone now while I'm waiting on this test to continue. Another gift card from Peter Laycock. Very generous. Peter, oh my gosh. I'm gonna hold my Amazon gift cards right now until I can figure out in the next week or two whether or not the Sony's a keeper. I think it's a keeper. And if so, then the next step, of course, will be to put the microphones on it and see if the microphones will sound as good or even maybe even better than running them through a second camera. So if all that works out, then that means there's an opportunity for a camera B to replace that Panasonic, which, as you can tell from the image, I don't ever use that Panasonic camera for video. The image is too washed out, and the Panasonic menus are so clunky. It almost feels like it's a children's toy, the way the menus are like for a 6-year-old, and it's very difficult to find settings. For me, it is. They don't feel as refined. But it's also an older camera, and Panasonic may have gotten better, or maybe they're still the same today. I don't know. Also, I'm also thinking maybe a cinema camera from Canon potentially would be much cheaper and might be better suited for 1080 broadcasting live. But I can buy that used and it won't be that expensive. But thank you so much, Peter. Oh my gosh. And I don't see any other. Who was that from? Charlie B. I don't see a gift card from Charlie B. But, you know, if you're sending Amazon gift cards, make sure you're getting the email address spelled correctly. And then sometimes Amazon can take a little bit before they actually send the gift card, although these have all come through pretty quick. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Nonetheless, it's the thought that counts, and I appreciate you very much, Charlie, and thank you for supporting the channel, my friend. And again, happy birthday to you. What's interesting on these temperatures is what I suspected. Whatever it was that caused those temperatures to go up, I'm going to guess it's never going to go any higher than that. It looks like 89C is where it's going to top out, and it's not going to allow the system to get hotter. Now, I don't know that for certain. We've only been running the test for under 5 minutes, so I'm speculating based on the behavior I've seen that it's self-adjusting to the workload. Fox Voyager says, is it worth it to upgrade the camcorder's firmware? You know, I always upgrade the firmware on my camcorders, and the firmware for camcorders doesn't usually come out very often, but it is something I will check on the Sony. I expect the Sony, being brand new out of the box, to have the latest firmware on it already, but of course I will check it. And I will always make sure I have the latest firmware on all my technology gadgets, not just on computers, but anything I have that can take a firmware update, I'm going to put that firmware update on it. And it will be something I check after the broadcast as I'm getting more familiar with this new camera. So yes, definitely worth it to upgrade to firmware update. Worth it to upgrade the firmware if an update is available. Shamim wants to know if the reason this mini PC is a bit bulkier because of its internal GPU. No, I don't think so. I think that they could have designed this any number of ways. This is a case they've already used on a different model, and this is a way of repurposing that. Instead of retooling the factory and redesigning, it costs less to repurpose a case you're already making anyway. You know, the idea that you can have two 2.5-inch drives in it is the first that I've ever seen on a mini PC. I won't use either of those regardless, but that's a design choice. Without those, this could be a little bit thinner. With regards to the size of the motherboard, the fact that we've got to have added cooling for that discrete graphics card means we need room for those heat sinks. But there is quite a bit of space between the edge of the board, the back of the board, the side panel on the case. And this case is getting warm. Feel the heat coming off back behind the circuit board here. This side of it's very cool. Obviously, this is a side that has the 4 fans, and they're pushing air through this way. So this side of it, there's a wall of heat coming out all about that far. But the fans are dead silent. They're not making any noise at all. There's a little heat coming out of the top, a little bit of heat coming out of the back. Most of the heat's coming out right from pulling the air in on this side and blowing it out that way. Are all the fans working? Yeah, I just checked them. They're all spinning. Now in the BIOS, there's probably settings to have those fans work more aggressively or more loudly. I pretty much like to leave it the way the factory has set it in order to have the best overall customer experience. But yeah, all 4 fans are spinning. And as I mentioned, dead quiet. Not sure if the camera will pick up the fans spinning in there, get the right angle on it. So our current temperature is sitting at 81. It did reach 89C earlier. Test shows it's been running for about 9 minutes. So we're about halfway through this test. Now, normally, I don't really think it's fair to run this test on mini PCs and laptops because they're not really designed for that kind of a workload. Well, it's possible, obviously, to put some kind of a workload like this on this machine. If any PC was ever going to do well, it would be a mini PC of this nature. These workloads are not realistic of any actual work anybody would actually do. This is a simulation of an over and above and beyond example of what maybe 3% of all computer owners, at least on the consumer side, would ever do to the computer, and certainly not for the length of time that we're running the test. So I can't express enough how unrealistic and how really what we're doing here is torturing this poor thing. And when the robots revolt because of the torture we put them through, you'll know why they're so upset. But in the meantime, if that was something you were concerned about, this obviously isn't having any overheating problems. It's maintaining itself quite well. It may be throttling, which is what it's supposed to do in order to keep the system up and running and reliable and running as fast as possible. So while we're waiting here, I could also bring up the task manager information. We'll hit Control-Alt-Delete, over to the task manager, go over to performance. Source monitor. I kind of think that main screen there was probably more beneficial for us right here. And depending on what Prime 95 is asking the CPU to do, you will notice the speed of the CPU It'll cycle up and down. The more it's going to cycle up, the more power it's going to use, and the hotter it's going to get. So it might run at a slower speed to prevent that. Make sure the system isn't going to crash. And if we scroll down on this side of things, you can see how many watts it's pulling. Lots and lots and lots of information here. GPU temperatures here, which makes sense because we're not really utilizing any GPU function of Prime 95. It's just CPU and RAM that we're torturing. Solid state drive temperature there, which again, it's not a drive test, so don't expect there to be much information there. And our maximum frequency was 4.5 gigahertz. And we're maintaining temps in the 80s. And we're about 13 and a half minutes through the 20-minute torture test. And the machine is whisper quiet. I mean, it is completely quiet. As I mentioned, it may be possible to go into the BIOS and turn those fans up to more aggressive cooling, which I likely would make the machine louder and also run cooler. However, my preference is to leave it just the way it is. I like it. And as long as I don't get a blue screen, as long as we don't crash, and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So Trevor says the CPU is throttling. It does appear that the CPU is throttling. And I would expect that to happen on any mini PC. The problem with many mini PCs, though, when you run this unrealistic torture test on them for the period of time that I do, is they can't throttle enough and they'll blue screen. So as long as it's throttling without crashing, then it's perfect. Because you aren't likely going to push the computer this hard for this length of time when you're actually using it to do something instead of pretending to do something, which is what a benchmark is doing. Benchmark is pretending. John Williams wants to know, on my HP laptop, I got a firmware update. Is that the same as a BIOS update? Yes, a BIOS is a type of firmware. I can't get over how quiet it is. There is literally no sound coming out of this at all. If there was ever an excuse for, to hear the fans, you'd think it'd be now. Lynn's Music wants to know, what could power supply go wrong? Literally any of the components that a power supply is made from can fail. And those components can fail due to age, due to the quality of the components, due to overworking the power supply, putting too heavy of a load on it for too long of a period of time. You could have a brownout or a power spike that you're unaware of coming from the wall that's hitting your power supply. You could have cold solder joints. You could have a fan that's not spinning as fast as it really needs to keep things cool. So you could have a heat-related problem. It's really up to the imagination, and in the amount of time that I've spent explaining to you what can cause it to go wrong, you could have just bought a new one and replaced it. They're very inexpensive. What else I'm missing here in the chat? I guess I can make camera one a little bit smaller if you want to see information about the performance screen there. Paul O'Brien contributes €5. He says, just got back on the live stream. I was busy building my new PC and was having issues with cabling. So fixing it over the weekend. Enjoy your build, Paul. Thank you for your super chat and for supporting the channel here. Blackwatch said, one can never have enough Peter Laycock in this world. A very cool dude. For sure. Tech said, benchmarking and real world usage are two different things. They're extremely different things. I think the YouTube community and consumers that have no technical background or have no academic technical education, but a false sense of accuracy and quality determination based on tests like this that for me is more of a burn-in test to make sure the computer will survive this kind of torture. But this kind of torture is likely never going to happen in the real world. Maybe some of you might be that way, but the vast majority of computer owners are not that way. They wouldn't know how to use a computer to this level. So for me, it's like a quality control thing, right? And there's a little curiosity, just wondering, what if, worst case scenario, we were to slam this computer with a very unlikely workload for a very long period of time? Would it handle it or would it give up the ghost? And it looks like it's handling it just fine. I'm not worried about thermal throttling. What I'm worried about is if the thermal throttling isn't enough. So it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. I would rather see the CPU thermal throttle and keep the process going than for it not to, in order to achieve some benchmark you're looking for, and then cause damage to the components or cause the machine to crash, losing all the work you were supposedly doing when you were emulating with this test. So the important thing is to prioritize the workload at any cost. I don't care if that CPU has to slow down to 100 megahertz. If it crashes during a video render and that video render is taking 6 hours, you have to start over. And if it crashes at 5 hours and 30 minutes, it's like you just wasted 5.5 hours. You have to set the whole thing up again and try again. The fact that this machine is handling this workload as well as it is above and beyond expectations, honestly. You know, there are some people who want to do a truck and tractor pull with a front wheel drive Honda Civic. Not designed for that. It's not going to fare well in that competition. Use the right computer for the right task. Computer like this is a great content creation tool. It's a great gaming machine, obviously with the limitations of the GPU. Intel's drivers for their graphics card keep getting better and better and better. So it's possible its gaming prowess continues to evolve and get better as time goes on and Intel releases updated drivers. Of course, you could always get an external GPU and go through that route. Ideally, you'd want a Thunderbolt interface for that. But if you were going to do that, you're just better off buying a gaming PC if that's what you want. This would be for light gaming. This will handle light gaming super easy. But if gaming is your main thing and that's what you care about most, aside from that NUC i7X, even that's going to fall short of what you can build yourself. But you know, if you have the luxury of time and the luxury of money to both afford a gaming computer of that caliber and have the time to sit around and play those games of that caliber, you don't represent the majority of computer owners. And you know, I try to make my videos appealing for the masses, not for a specific niche of computer user, because people use their computers in lots of different ways. You can use them to control equipment, factory equipment. You can use them for accounting. You can use them for video and photo editing. You can use them for gaming. And then within gaming, there's all these different genres of retro, esports, first-person shooters, flight simulators, et cetera, et cetera. So the variation of what's possible leads me to this conclusion. If you're somebody looking for something specific, build it yourself. You're the average user who wants to be able to accomplish real-world tasks using real-world software in the real world. All of these benchmarks don't mean anything to you, and nor should they. They're conveying information which people are giving a higher value than the results actually have in reality. As much as I am a power user, there's nothing that I do, including video rendering, that would cause a machine to run at this level of performance for this length of time. And if I'm not doing it, chances are you're not doing it. Now, something that can cause a computer to work very, very hard would be having multiple virtual machines running simultaneously. But in many cases, people who do that are going to want a very capable processor, and they're going to want a ton of RAM. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario here, and I'm not suggesting that any computer ever really is a one-size-fits-all. There are varying shapes and sizes and capabilities and capacities at varying price points to fit people of varying budgets and of varying usage requirements. And none of you in the chat room will have the same requirements, other than the most common one, which is I just want to turn it on and do my daily routine of checking email, browsing the web, paying my bills, doing some social media stuff, watching, streaming some videos. That's 80+% of computer owners. And then, for whatever reason, the people who represent the minority tend to be the most vocal. And to people who don't know any better, you'd be under the impression that they were the ones that were the minority. But no, we have a very small minority of users who are quite vocal, in that vocality, if you don't know any better, it'd make it appear to be a larger group, but it's actually a relatively small group. So one of the reasons I create this channel and I continue to make these videos is to try and bring a grounded sense of practicality to what is, in most cases of a lot of the YouTube tech channels, over the top, ridiculous tech minutia that the vast majority of people not only don't care about, it would make no real difference in the real world over many of the things people evaluate as valuable. But that's not to say they're wrong. It's just to say that they are not the majority they appear to be, and that the fussy nature of that attitude is best resolved by building your own computer, because rarely will anything be pre-built good enough for somebody with that perspective. And if it was, then they're going to say it costs too much. So they're going to find something where it's not good enough for them. And that's fine for them, but it doesn't mean it applies to any of you. Just so you're aware, when you're watching other content from other channels and what they're saying is some amazing thing, in reality may have no difference or impact in the way that you use a computer. So at the end of the day, that's for you to decide. Like I said, this is not a normal thing I would do to a mini PC. It's unusual that I would even consider running Prime 95 on this. And I think that speaks volumes for just how close to a desktop this is getting. And at a fraction of the price of an equivalently equipped desktop. So all things for you to weigh and measure and determine the value for your own personal preferences. So how are we doing on the test? Have we gone over 20 minutes yet? Way over. Yeah, and it's what I suspected. It's got to be throttling at 89. It's been keeping us in the mid 80s throughout the remainder of the entirety of the test, rather. And it's working fantastic. And obviously, when we stop this test, You're going to see those temperatures drop rapidly because we're using air cooling. Watch this. Test. Stop. Watch those temperatures drop. Old Man 55 said the only time I ever saw 100% CPU usage is when converting videos, but it was on an i7-12700 and it did the job. Yeah, exactly. So all in all, I'm trying to think if I can find a flaw or a suggestion for improvement here. I suppose, you know, getting access to the M.2 drive and the memory could be a little easier, but not at the cost of removing those fans. I've never seen a mini PC that had 4 fans in it like that, let alone how quiet they are. I would think you'd hear them. Let's reboot it and go into the BIOS and take a look at what our BIOS on this looks like. See what options we have in there. Let's do this. We'll go to Settings, Windows Update. Where did they move this to? Advanced options, maybe. Recovery. Advanced startup. Troubleshoot. Advanced UEFI firmware settings. All right, so we just have a text-based BIOS here. Sixteen threads total. Gonna do here. Oh, this is where you can set your fan curve. Yeah, I would leave all this alone. It's all pretty straightforward. Power limit 1 and power limit 2, I would leave these alone as well. I don't need any changes in this area. It's obviously a Kingston NVMe drive there. That looks to be about all you can change. Not a whole lot in there to manipulate. So once again, there are people that want to make all kinds of weird little changes, a little bit of control they want to have. And for them, the best, in my opinion, the most satisfied they're ever going to be is building their own machine. You know, having something pre-built to their specific preferences, it seems highly unlikely that they would ever be satisfied with anything that they didn't build themselves. Like I said, if someone did build it that way, they would charge a pretty penny for it, and then they'd complain about how expensive it was. So, you know, to each their own. I would be curious how this worked in the real world gaming. So maybe we'll have Camera Girl load some of the games that she plays onto it and have her try it out. Let's see what she thinks about, what is it? Terra, World of Warcraft, Rift, Star Wars, what is it? SW, what is it? Order of the Jedi? The Old Republic. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, pretty limited BIOS here. And you know what? I'm a big fan of a limited BIOS. I don't think users should be getting in here and making changes that could potentially damage the machine or leave the machine unstable. There's got to be a balance between performance and stability. A lot of times when you see people eking out the highest levels of performance, they're paying for that in a lack of stability, and they don't often are fully transparent about that consequence. A lot of times they'll brush it off like it's no big deal. It's blue screened a couple times. In my line of work, when a blue screen happens, it costs the company money. And any amount of work that the employee did that they lost, the company is paying that employee to do the same work again. So we definitely want to have reliability first, performance second. But in the enthusiast community, they often want performance first, and that's all that matters at any cost financially. The amount of money they'll spend on cooling equipment, the amount of money they'll spend on their electric bill, the amount of money that they can dump into these fancy custom liquid coolers, water blocks. Sorry, guys, it's just not the world I live in. People in my world just don't throw money around like that. So don't expect to see that kind of content here. That's all I can tell you. It just doesn't get my bills paid. I don't have the kind of money or the kind of time to take what money I have just to go chasing numbers. Looking strictly for results. What's interesting is I didn't see, hey, will you check the front door for me? I didn't see any option for changing that boot screen. Sometimes in the BIOS, there'll be an option for that power on self-test screen to change it from a big logo to a little logo. And for whatever reason, it's synchronizing with the capture card where it thinks it's in 4K or something. What is a 4K capture? And likely if I put it in 4K mode, we'll see that logo the way it's intended to be seen. Craig Casabona contributes $20 via Super Chat. Thank you, Craig. Is that you or me?
What?
That package.
You.
That package is me? Open that up.
I told you.
It's just got a pull tab. You don't have to use. All right.
Maybe you can see it.
Oh,
It's magic.
so another PC to review next week. Right on. Which model is that?
Let's see. This is the CK11.
Oh, CK11. We did the TK11, and that's the CK11.
So this came from
Yeah, from the folks over at
Cameron.
from Ace Magician. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk about Ace Magician on their video. This is MinisForum's video, so. Yeah, you got to get to work and make a thumbnail for me.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you for this thumbnail. You did a good job on this one.
I know. Thank you.
Let's go back to full screen on camera one. And again, if there's other questions I can answer, I'll do my best to answer them. But bear in mind that if I think your question is not practical, I'll say as much. But I'll do my best to provide an answer regardless. And of course, always watch the chat room for answers to questions as well. We have a lot of very knowledgeable people in our community that are a lot smarter than me on a lot of topics. So don't ignore the chat room when asking a question. It's not just my answer that matters. Sometimes there's 6 different ways to accomplish the same thing, and you might prefer somebody else's instruction to my own. Doesn't hurt my feelings none. Nikki Duncan says, will this perform better than the UM790 Pro? It should. I mean, just the fact that we're not running on integrated graphics. By default, the minute we go to a discrete graphics card, we should be far superior than any built-in graphics on a chip. So the UM790 Pro, well, it is an excellent computer. If you look at the graphics performance on that compared to the graphics performance on this is no 4090 Ti, okay, but this should be markedly better than anything built onto a GPU. Johnny Weld said, Carey was the teacher of my build, so thank you. I watched the video 5 times, went for it. I loved every moment of the build. So thank you, Carey. My budget build was an H370 HD 3 gigabyte Gen 9 build. Many of those in use right now. Many of my clients, I sold a ton of those. They were a really good value for what you were getting in performance and still hold their own against new machines being released today. That 9700K, well, it may be limited to DDR4 and Gen 3 SSD. For most customers, you move them into a 13th gen and they're still opening Excel and Word and PowerPoint and PDF files. Their email, their browsing, all appears the same to them. Jason Mirabal says, Carey, I know you've got the NUC i7 and the NAD 9. Do you favor one over the other? The NUC X i7 is going to be just the king of all mobile gaming or mini PC gaming, right? Because the NAD 9 isn't going to have that level of graphics that NUC i7 has. When you take the graphics card part out of the equation, the NAD 9 has benefits in that it's smaller, it's a little more traditional, it has more ports. It's also easier to overlook. The NUC i7X makes a statement. So that's really going to be something somebody mentions. If you walk into a room with that, I guarantee they're going to say something about it because it's unusual and not in a bad way. It depends where your priorities lie, right? You want to sacrifice the ports, but you want to have a better gaming experience. The NUC i7X is the way to go, or even the NUC i5X. They had them available. It's like they're sold out. So every one of these mini PCs I like for the right task. There is not a single mini PC that I would say exceeds all others in all things. And if we're, having very basic needs, like if we're trying to help a customer get online, pay bills, do the normal things they do, we don't want to oversell them and have them spend more money than they need to spend, which makes me a terrible businessman. I recently sent one of my customers the NUC 11. Newegg had them on sale for $299 bare bones. I put 64 gigs of SODIMM RAM, 2 sticks of 32 for $95. I put a Samsung 980 NVMe drive in it for like 60 or 70 bucks. Bought the Windows 10 Pro key from VIP CDK deals using the Carey coupon code. And then mailed it because the customer's in another state. They've never seen a mini PC before. I didn't want to send them the most expensive in case they were just immediately turned off by it. But I also didn't want to send them the cheapest one in case they felt like it really wasn't good compared to their desktop. And I know the average customer who sees a mini PC for the first time and has never experienced one is going to say, this obviously isn't going to be impressive based on its size. I've dealt with that my whole life too. I'm short. People underestimate me all the time. not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Anyway, I sent it to him, and he called me up yesterday and he said, I want to give you some feedback on that mini PC you sent. He says, one of my concerns is that if we get burglarized, the office, the thieves could easily pick that up and take it, whereas the desktops they would require multiple trips in and out of the building to take all the desktops. So I mentioned, what the Kensington lock is. He's never heard of it, and explained it to him. So the other thing is we're using 3 monitors now across all of our desktops. And this is a accounting business. Oh, you guys were using 2, but nonetheless, I said that computer, that Nook 11 will support, obviously, the HDMI out. It's got a mini display port out. So I already included a display port to HDMI 6-foot cable in the box because I knew he was going to want it. But I did not know about the 3rd monitor, but there is a Thunderbolt port on the Nook 11. And you can just get a Thunderbolt to display port or HDMI cable. I said 3 monitors is no problem. He said, well, the thing is we need to have a USB port for a keyboard, for a mouse, for a printer, for a scanner, and then an open one available for, putting in a flash drive if a customer comes in with their tax data, or we want to give a copy of their tax data to them. And it fell short by like 2 USB ports. Well, you could buy a USB hub, but nonetheless, the Nook 11 doesn't have a lot of ports. And I told him, I had to send them something for evaluation purposes. There are many PCs that have more ports. There are many PCs that have 4 HDMI ports on the back. There are many PCs that have 8 USB ports on them. We needed to start somewhere and evaluate it. So aside from the ports, I said, how was it in performance? He said he was completely blown away. He thinks that little mini PC, that Nook 11, is faster than any of the computers I've sold him. I'm not surprised because I put 64 gigs of RAM in it, and it's 2 generations newer than the 9th gen, which I think he might have a couple 11th gen, but mostly they're all 9th gen. He doesn't have any 13th gen. The Nook 11 is 11th gen. So imagine, I said there's mini PCs that are even faster than that one. And he needs it to be able to get on the net. He said getting it on the network was easy peasy. Loading up the software is quick. And his main concern was that because it's got personal identifiable information on those computers, that would make it more of a concern of data theft or identity theft in the case of a burglary. So I said, well, have you ever been burglarized before? And he said, yes, it happened once. It was over 10 years ago in a different building. But now he's got trauma. He's got PTSD about it. And I said, okay, well, we can get you a Kensington lock and we can figure out a clever way. He goes, well, we have lockable desk drawers. I suppose I could drill a hole, put the mini PC in the desk drawer, close it and lock it, and just run the cables out the hole. Yeah, I think that would be okay. I had a little concern about airflow, but if a drawer is this big and that deep, airflow shouldn't be a problem there. So overall, it was his very first experience with mini PCs. He's never even seen one before. And he was blown away by the performance of it. And that was what? I think I paid $349 for it. I know Newegg had it on sale for $299. But B&H Photo had it for $349, which was still, I think it sold for $649 originally, and that's bare bones. RAM is super cheap right now, so under $100 for 64 gigs. I want them to store all their data on their NAS, so to discourage them from storing data on the local machines, I don't want anything more than a terabyte. Even that's really too much. 500 gigs is really what they should have on there. But they do load a lot of years of tax software, and that alone can take up a lot of space. But it also creates bad habits. And I did mention that to him. I said, you really should be putting the data on the NAS. So if a thief were to take these computers, first of all, most of these thieves are complete morons. So they don't know anything about what they're stealing. That'd be it to the pawn shop, that they sell it to, that would potentially have the skills to retrieve any identifying information. But again, just the Kensington cable for the K-lock, it's going to prevent that from happening. It's cut proof. just a matter of how you secure down the opposite end of the cable. And I said, knowing that you're going to hook up 3 monitors and that you need 5 USB ports, I can look at varying models. And I think MinisForum actually has a model with that I/O. And that's what's important to that customer, right? It may not match any of the needs of any of you that I'm talking to right now. That's why each individual's needs are unique to them. And it's very difficult when doing these reviews to recommend whether or not it's good for you, because I don't know you. I don't know what your needs are. What I'm trying to do is introduce you to it. Let you be familiar with it so you'll understand if that's something that might be appealing for your needs, meet your expectations and your budget, of which I know nothing, nor do I want to know it unless I'm being paid to consult with you. I'm trying to teach you how to help yourself by providing you with information, and then you can value that information as priceless or worthless. It's entirely up to you and each viewer on their own to make that decision to their own preferences. As a result, there's so many mini PCs to choose from because there's so many different needs that people need their computers for, and so many different budgets that we're working within. And I'm trying to show you as many of them as possible so you can get the gist of it. And the gist of it is essentially, they are not desktops in the sense of upgradability or repairability, nor will they ever be. They are cheaper, meaning less expensive. They are just as reliable as desktops. There's no lack of reliability. However, when a new high-end, high-performance model comes out, if there's going to be any reliability issues, it'll always be with some bleeding edge version of a mini PC. So for example, the GTR 7 has had a lot of teething problems, but it's also very powerful in its form factor and very unique in a lot of different ways, from the way the power connector is to the chipset that's on it. It's all still brand new, and if you're going to buy something that's brand new like that, that's bleeding edge, you're going to pay more for it, and you're going to suffer the consequences of being first. That goes with everything, right? When they come out with a new model of car, the recalls that it has, you are likely going to be involved in. Give it a year to work out the kinks. The problem with giving it a year in this industry is there'll be 6 more new models released. So at some point, you have to make a decision and base that on knowing what your choices are. Choices in vertical or horizontal machines, choices in gaming and the intensity of the gaming. Do you need a discrete graphics, or is something like the built-in graphics on an AMD processor all you need? Everything from color, shape, size, whether it's DDR5 or DDR4, Gen 3 or Gen 4, may not even matter to you, or it may be the most important thing on your list. And of course, it'll be priced accordingly. Peter said he's using a 9700K now. There's a 9900KS in the streaming machine. Kevin says he purchased the Bosgame mini PC from Amazon, did an M2 and memory upgrade. I love it, and thanks, Carey, for featuring it on a video. I think we sold a lot of those because it was very inexpensive and it didn't bottleneck or it didn't artificially limit the amount of RAM or the fact that it's dual channel, where the other models from other manufacturers at that price point significantly limited the speed of the storage drive and the RAM capacity. I was blown away by that Bosgame. I was very impressed with how open that system was. It's no rocket ship, but value for dollar, it's in a league of its own. Are you telling me to wrap it up? Sorry, the setup of the camera didn't count. All right. Well, I think if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Let me shout out a super thank you to our friend Buster out there in Scotland, and that other very, very generous contribution from Rob Foster joining us from England. Ah, there's Charlie B's $6.23 Amazon gift card and $7.28. Those are some weird numbers. Thank you, Charlie. Those just came in. Thank you again to Avery Ramsdorf and to Nick Caffrey for your contributions. Frankie B sent a $50 Zelle contribution before the show. And Sarge Tech sent an Amazon gift card of $10 earlier as well. And Peter Laycock also contributed via PayPal and in Super Chat. He covered all three bases. Thank you as well to Charlie Pat 74, who just contributed $10 via Super Chat. And I'm going to shout out the rest of the Super Chats here once I can find the screen. Douglas Burchell contributes $5, says another great show with a bonus. Thanks, Douglas. Thanks again to Craig Casabona, Paul O'Brien, Stan Aristoff, Winston Liu, Joseph Hawkins, Lotto Win with that $50 Super Chat, Ben Laird, thank you as always, Fatal Dragons, our friends Bob R., Paul O'Brien, Alan Lindas, and of course, as previously mentioned, Peter Laycock. CareyHolzman Show being brought to you by Peter Laycock. What a super guy. Glad to hear he's doing well. Really jealous of that temperature out there in Scotland right now. What I wouldn't do to trade places. All right, guys. And thanks for your patience in me very quickly setting up the Sony camera. I know what I'll be doing later today. Dialing everything in. But out of the box, it's pretty easy to set up. Way easier than any camera I've set up so far, which is what I was expecting out of Sony, and it did not fail to deliver. And I don't know if are we doing any live videos this weekend? We might. The CK11? Yeah, we might do the Ace Magician CK11 that just arrived today. Maybe if we have time on the weekend, maybe we'll do that review. If you enjoy the content, be sure and hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Be sure and hit the bell notification to be made aware anytime we're going live. Also, know that when I do go live, it's usually at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes, like I'll always do a show on Mondays at 1 o'clock. That's for members only. And I always do a show on Friday, every Friday at 1 o'clock. As for the rest of the days of the week, I will do shows as time permits. I've got a lot of content, ton of content. I just don't have a lot of time to make it. I have a number of unfinished projects that I need to finish, including prepping the giveaways from yesterday. I was prepping one of the machines with a firmware update, and it won't reboot now. So I'm going to work on trying to recover that. Otherwise, I'll have to find a replacement for that individual. But thank you to the community, to all my friends in blue and in green, and those of you who are in white joining us. I hope you'll continue to come back and become a regular participant here in our live chats. I'd love to see this community grow with more like-minded and kind individuals. Thank you, camera girl. Good thumbnail.
You're welcome.
Do you want to say something?
I just wanted to say goodbye, everybody, because I know you're going to spend 6 hours on that camera.
It's a Midwest goodbye. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of what's left of Friday. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.